December 1940. In the unforgiving heat of the Libyan desert, the fortress of Giarabub loomed as a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. For over 15 years, the Italians had fortified this oasis, transforming it into a formidable stronghold and key garrison, in what was their southernmost outpost in a series that marked the border with Egypt. But as the events of World War II unfolded in North Africa, Giarabub's defences were about to face an equally formidable adversary. Elements of the determined and battle-ready 18th Brigade of the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. This clash was far more than a display of brute force. It was a testament to tactical ingenuity that would make a lasting impact on the North African campaign. Led by the determined Brigadier George Wooten, the Australians faced an entrenched enemy who were led by one of Italy's greatest assets, Colonel Salvatore Castagna. An experienced soldier and officer from World War I, Castagna had a reputation of being a fierce and ruthless commander. Additionally, the Australians had zero air and tank support, their machine guns constantly jamming from the relentless sandstorms and up against an experienced Italian force of some 2,000 soldiers. With all odds stacked against them, how did the 500 men of the relatively inexperienced 18th Brigade manage to not only hold their own in battle, but capture an entire Italian garrison? The answer lies within the genius plan forged by the Australian officers. But before diving into the siege itself, we need to understand the strategic significance of Giarabub. This small oasis lies on the edge of the Libyan plateau, approximately 320 kilometers south of Bardia and 65 kilometers west of the Egyptian border. To the immediate south stretches the Great Sand Sea of the Sahara Desert, while the town stands at the western end of a series of salt marshes that extend east to the Egyptian border. Geographically, Giarabub is the westernmost of the oases lining the edge of the Sahara into Egypt. In 1940, Giarabub stood as the southernmost Italian frontier outpost along the border with Egypt. Since 1925, after being ceded to Libya by the British, it had served as a critical supply base for Italian forces across the Libyan desert, symbolizing Italy's colonial and military strength. As the North African campaign intensified, this remote outpost became a key battleground in the struggle for control over the vast deserts and vital Mediterranean supply routes. In this unforgiving landscape, Giarabub rose as a symbol of Italian dominance, fortified to withstand even the most determined adversaries. The Italians had transformed Giarabub into a near-impenetrable fortress. Trenches, machine guns, and barbed wire formed layers of man-made defenses, while rugged cliffs and harsh desert terrain acted as natural barriers. Patrols, early warning systems, and well-maintained supply lines bolstered their confidence. Major Colonel Salvatore Castagna commanded a strong force of 1,350 Italian troops and 750 Libyan soldiers. Armed with an extensive array of artillery, including anti-aircraft and anti-tank guns, Giarabub was bristling with firepower, ready to repel any assault. Against these formidable defences stood a much smaller Australian contingent. Part of General Wavell's Western Desert Force, around 400 to 500 troops from the 7th Division, led by Brigadier George Wooten's 18th Brigade, prepared for the assault. The 2nd 9th Battalion spearheaded the attack, supported by elements of the 2nd 10th and 2nd 12th Battalions, along with artillery from C Battery of the 4th Regiment. The 6th Australian Cavalry Regiment, under Colonel M. Ferguson, provided critical reconnaissance and tactical support. Despite being outnumbered nearly 5-1, the Australians' unwavering resolve and tactical brilliance would soon turn the tide. As we dive into this intense and unlikely victory, we'll uncover how the Australians managed to defy the odds and secure a crucial win at Giarabub, a battle that became a testament to their tenacity and ingenuity in the North African desert. Facing a heavily fortified Italian force, the Allies saw the strategic importance of taking Giarabub to weaken Italian control over North Africa. General Wavell responded by positioning British forces at the nearby Siwa oasis, aiming to cut off Italian access to this crucial resource. By September, the King's Royal Rifle Corps established defensive positions to monitor Italian movements and prevent reinforcements from reaching Giarabub, though these efforts alone proved insufficient. Recognizing the need for fresh tactics, Command brought in B Squadron of the 6th Australian Divisional Cavalry, led by Captain F. H. Brown, in December. The Australians reinforced Siwa's defences and initiated a series of scouting and raiding missions against Italian outposts, marking the start of their significant contribution to the campaign in North Africa. In December 1940, Australian forces began probing Giarabub, initially focusing on observation and small-scale raids to assess Italian defences. The 6th Division Cavalry Regiment positioned observation posts around the oasis, gathering intelligence on Italian routines. Following several skirmishes and raids on the Italian frontier outpost of Garnel Grine, 65 kilometres to the north of Giarabub, the Australians grew bolder, successfully ambushing Italian convoys and disrupting supply lines. By late December, the Italians, unable to sustain their smaller outposts, began retreating to Giarabub, leaving behind equipment and supplies that the Australians could repurpose. Following these reconnaissance missions, the Australian forces intensified their pressure on Giarabub, launching air raids that targeted the oasis's vital supply routes. Despite repeated attempts by the Regia Aeronautica to airdrop supplies, the Australians consistently disrupted these efforts. Their strategic air raids and ground patrols forced many of the Italian supply aircraft to abandon their missions, weakening the garrison's ability to sustain itself and putting additional strain on the already stretched Italian forces at Giarabub. Libyan troops began deserting, and by February, over 600 had been captured. Italian troops, though struggling with starvation and exhaustion, refused to surrender, clinging to their desert stronghold. As preparations for a full assault on Giarabub ramped up, Colonel Ferguson conducted a daring reconnaissance mission on March 7th. During this mission, however, he was severely wounded by Italian artillery. His evacuation marked a significant loss for the Australians, as Ferguson had been instrumental in shaping the campaign's tactics and morale. Command passed to Major Abbott just as the 18th Brigade prepared for the final assault on Giarabub. The Australians were now poised to strike, determined to take the fortified oasis and bring an end to the Italian stronghold in the Libyan desert. On another front, General Wavell decided to capture Giarabub in order to withdraw the divisional cavalry regiment to join the rest of the division to travel to Greece. The amount of transport available limited his force to 1 battalion plus 1 company, with enough supplies to last 10 days. The operation must be carried through successfully in that time. With Wootton now at the helm, the Australians prepared to launch the full siege on Giarabub. Despite their determination, they faced daunting odds, operating without air support, little ammunition, and no armour. When Wootton asked whether there would be air cooperation or support, O'Connor replied, "Please don't ask me for any planes. I have only 2 Wellington bombers with which to prevent Rommel bringing his reinforcing units and supplies into Tripoli. If I give you one, I will have only one left." As Wootton would write post-war, it seemed strange in modern war against an enemy in a strongly prepared and wired defensive position, and who had good observation and was well equipped with guns and machine guns, to move against and attack him without any tanks or air support. Despite the challenging circumstances, Wootton had his orders. He selected the 2nd 9th Battalion for the attack, reinforced by D Company and the mortar platoon of the 2nd 10th Battalion, a composite machine gun platoon of Vickers machine guns from the 2nd 10th and 2nd 12th Battalions under Captain T.J. Schmedge, and the protection platoon of the 2nd 12th Battalion. Also attached were the 12 25-pounder guns of C Battery, 4th Regiment, Royal Horse Artillery, which, with the guns already deployed, would give Wootton 16 guns in direct support. While the force organised to move south, Wootton and his staff went ahead to reconnoitre the oasis. Wootton's leadership truly shone as he prepared to launch the siege. He knew that breaking through the Italian defences required more than just force. It demanded careful planning and insight. Wootton took it upon himself to understand every aspect of the terrain around Giarabub, focusing on a marshy area south of the oasis that could play a key role in the operation. On the 12th of March, Wootton inspected Giarabub's defences but was limited by Italian outposts, particularly along Pipsqueak Valley. The positions south of Giarabub remained largely unknown, a gap Wootton was determined to address. Ferguson, his predecessor, had kept his plan to strike from the southern Tama Heights secret. But after his injury, it was unclear to the officers. On the 16th of March, Wootton and his commanders reconnoitred 11 kilometres south of Giarabub, confirming a track through the marshes and a gap in the frontier wire for vehicle passage. Though they were likely seen by the Italians, artillery fire from the Australians repelled a counterattack. Wootton, recognising the importance of the southern heights, ordered B Squadron to capture Wootton House and advance towards Giarabub. And so, the siege began. At dawn on the 17th of March, B Squadron captured Wootton House, which had been unoccupied overnight. When two Italian vehicles approached at 8:30 a.m., the Australians opened fire, resulting in 2 deaths, 3 injuries and 15 prisoners, including an officer who provided valuable intelligence on Giarabub's defences. Having taken its prisoners, the squadron advanced 7 kilometres, briefly driving Italians from Daly House, the last major obstacle before Giarabub. But the Australians were forced back by artillery fire and the post reoccupied, breeder cannons at the post being used to keep the Australians at a distance. Subsequent reconnaissance attempts failed, prompting Wootton to order an attack on March 19th by 2 companies of the 2nd 9th Battalion, aiming to secure Daly House and push the Italians back into their main defences. Artillery support was a concern, but Major Goshen resolved this by dragging 2 25-pounders through the marshes. Delays due to bogged vehicles meant the 2 companies only reached Daly House at 3 p.m, finding it unoccupied, though they faced inaccurate fire from town defences. Brigade Major Daly, filling in for Wootton, who was stricken with a stomach complaint, urged Lieutenant Colonel Martin to mount a rapid truck charge toward Giarabub. The Australians pressed on, capturing the Tama Heights southeast of the oasis with little resistance. Captain B.N. Berry, leading C Company, saw an opportunity to press on and pushed his company ahead. He deployed 13th Platoon to Ship Hill to provide covering fire, while the rest moved toward the town. By nightfall, they'd reached the Italian defence's southeastern corner, where sand had buried the wire. Berry returned to his force, and with 2 sections of 14 Platoon moved into the Italian position and discovered that Post 42 had been abandoned. Leaving Lieutenant R.W. Forster and the newly arrived 10th Platoon with orders to explore, Berry returned to report to HQ. This left Forster and his men in the rare position of moving freely within the Italian defences. They took over Post 36, overturned a 44mm gun and captured its sole guard. But at 2 a.m, an Italian patrol launched a counterattack. Following orders to avoid major engagement, Forster withdrew, but not without losses. 1 man killed and 7 wounded, one of whom later died. By the morning of March 20th, it was now clear to Wootton where the main attack would go in. The decision was made to launch the main attack in that area. Supporting operations included a cavalry demonstration to the north, while D Company of the 2nd 10th Battalion secured Post 76 on Brigadier's Hill, which protected the flank of the attack and kept the Italians uncertain about the main assault's direction. But for the Australians, the plan was clear. The initial assault would be made by 2 companies of the 2nd 9th Battalion, supported by mortars and machine guns on Ship Hill, and the battery of the 4th Regiment, Royal Horse Artillery. This attack had as its objective the complete occupation of the southern redoubt. Once this was accomplished, the other 2 companies of the battalion would attack on the flanks of the redoubt. To support the main thrust, D Company, 2nd 10th Battalion, would advance forward from Brigadier's Hill to open a track across the marsh, shortening the lines of communication supporting the main attack. The cavalry would also mount a subsidiary attack from the town's northern approaches down Pipsqueak Valley, their eventual objective being the occupation of the airfield. A fierce morning sandstorm swept across the battlefield, clogging every automatic weapon in the forward Australian companies and forcing them to dismantle and clean their Bren guns. By afternoon, the storm eased slightly, but still provided cover as more companies moved to their start lines. Throughout the afternoon, both sides exchanged fire. Italian machine gun and artillery rounds met Australian mortars, machine guns, boys' rifles, which were particularly effective against Italian sangars, and British artillery. From Ship Hill, the 2nd 10th Battalion's machine gunners struck at will, effectively suppressing Italian positions around the oasis. A lone Italian sniper attempted to pick off targets but failed, allowing the Australians to maintain steady fire. After dark, patrols gathered intelligence on the Italians, confirming their nervousness. Private Rickard's patrol moved cautiously inside the Italian wire, wary of the defenders. Once their mission was complete, the patrols withdrew, preparing for the imminent assault. On the morning of March 21st at 5:15 a.m., A and C companies launched the attack, with A Company on the right and C on the left, targeting 4 knolls along the redoubt's edge, 2 for each company. Following this, a company would capture a 5th knoll behind its initial targets. The 4th Regiment, Royal Horse Artillery, provided support with 12 guns firing on the initial objectives for 10 minutes before shifting to bombard the second objective for another 15 minutes. Machine guns and mortars positioned on Ship Hill also provided cover. As the lead companies moved into position, a fierce sandstorm swept across the oasis. Captain R.F. Reedy moved A Company to within 50 meters of the Italian wire to capitalize on reduced visibility. However, the artillery barrage fell short due to the swirling wind, striking A Company and killing 12 men, including Reedy, and injuring another 20. Amid the chaos, soldiers scrambled for cover, some wounded and terrified by the shell fire, which also briefly hit Ship Hill. Despite the casualties, A Company regrouped, with Corporal A. Calvert leading a small team through the Italian wire. Lieutenant W.H. Noyes' platoon, relatively unaffected, pushed forward, eventually reuniting with C Company. Berry, despite being injured, led his men to secure the first line of knolls. The Italians, shocked by the bombardment, offered minimal resistance, and by 7:26 a.m., Brigade Headquarters received news that the 2nd 9th Battalion had captured the 4 knolls. With A Company disorganized, D Company's platoon joined the assault on the second objective. Italian resistance intensified, with a mountain gun firing from the final knoll, and Italian positions near the fort and plantation area joining in. Berry attempted to advance a platoon across open ground, but was met with heavy fire, forcing a withdrawal after 2 casualties. With support from mortars and machine guns on Ship Hill and a Vickers detachment, the Australians subdued the last knoll's resistance shortly after 9 a.m. Captured Italians reported they had not eaten in 2 days and couldn't hold out much longer. B Company, which had been out of contact, reconnected with battalion headquarters by 10 a.m. On the northern front, the cavalry advanced down Pipsqueak Valley to distract from the main attack and capture key positions, meeting only light resistance except at a position called Egbert. By 9 a.m., they had secured a line running through Egbert, completing their objectives alongside the southern advance. Despite signs of diminishing resistance, Martin proceeded as planned, sending D Company through the cultivated area northeast of the redoubt toward the town. A previously identified minefield, spotted by an RAF Lysander, caused delays as a safe path was cleared. At 11:25 a.m., the 2nd 9th Battalion commenced a general advance into the town, entering the mosque, left undamaged per orders, at 11:30 a.m. By midday, the Australians had captured the fort, replacing the Italian flag with the black and blue standard of the 2nd 9th Battalion. The siege of Giarabub was officially over. Total Commonwealth casualties from December to the fall of the oasis amounted to 17 killed and 77 wounded, primarily from the 2nd 9th Battalion. It is estimated that about 250 Italians were killed, though the exact number remains uncertain, as strong winds quickly buried many bodies in sand after the fighting ceased. The Australians took approximately 50 officers and 1,250 men prisoner, with about 100 wounded among them. In a tactical sense, it was a total victory. Brigadier Wooten achieved his objective within the designated timeframe and with minimal losses. Among the captured officers was Major Colonel Salvatore Castagna, who was wounded alongside his loyal attendant. His surrender further underscored the significance of this battle, transforming what was perceived as a challenging conflict into a remarkable triumph for the Australians. Castagna spent his imprisonment in various camps, including those in Palestine and India, and returned to Italy on November 23, 1946. The siege of Giarabub was a tactical triumph for the Australians, showcasing their resilience and skill in desert warfare. While it was a minor strategic position, this hard-fought victory shattered Italian illusions of invincibility and boosted morale among Allied troops at a crucial moment in the war. The Italians, who once believed Giarabub to be an impregnable stronghold, witnessed their defences crumble against a smaller yet highly trained and resourceful Australian force. As the Australian forces pressed onward to confront even greater challenges, the lessons learned at Giarabub would echo throughout their campaigns in North Africa and beyond. While this battle may be overshadowed by larger engagements, its legacy endures as a powerful symbol of courage and perseverance. Let us remember and honour the sacrifices of those who fought, for their bravery paved the way for the freedoms we cherish today. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Thank you for watching.